All right. Good afternoon, early evening to everyone, and welcome to the Novato Unified Special Meeting of the Board of Trustees. If we could get started with the Pledge of Allegiance, if everyone would please stand and join. All right, thank you, everybody. So the first item is just is to approve our agenda. So I'm going to need the board, if there's anyone that would like to add or reorganize our staff report and then adjournment. It's up to you, but all right.
And just published.
And seconded by Trustee Jacobson. Appreciate that. So all in favor of approving tonight's agenda. We have 6 in the affirmative and 1 absent. And okay, so
Absent or going to be late, or do we know?
absent for the
Okay.
vote. All right, so it is time to begin. Our item tonight is a staff report to provide a financial and project update regarding the NUSD's Measure G bond program from 2016 to present. And we're going to let our Chief Financial Officer, Lois Standing, start us off. So,
Good evening. I'm just here to do a basic introduction, give you a little overview of what we see as tonight, how tonight will roll, and just so you have an expectation of what to expect that we're presenting. So over the last couple of weeks, our bond department has worked very hard to create the document you have in front of you. It is comprehensive, and in it you will see that we are going to be going over past projects, not spending a whole lot of time on that, but just to give you an idea of where the dollars that we've spent already have gone. Current projects, and what that means are projects that we are far enough into that it wouldn't make sense to not continue, that we have contracts, we've begun, and these are mostly things that will be happening next summer. And then what we're calling future projects are things that are included. You've approved them all. There's allocation in the budget for them, but they aren't far enough in that if you so decide, you could change your mind about that. But it would be, as you'll see, the dollars are working out pretty much. We can pay for everything that you've planned for, but not a whole lot more. So if you decide to add anything, you will have to, at the same time, pick something that won't be done. So it's that kind of puzzle piece. We want to get some specific direction from you tonight. Most specifically, we want some direction, and we'll have further discussion when the time comes for discussion about the charter school and how you want to proceed with sharing the bond funds with the charter school. And then if there's further information that you want, we need direction on exactly what we need to pull together. If you need further information for making decisions about any changes or things you want to make. And I also want to say that tonight is Mike Woolard's, probably his final formal action here at a board meeting. Friday is his last day with us. So I've just truly enjoyed working with him. I think he's offered the district quite a bit. And I just want to say thank you, especially for this last oomph to get this document together. And then we have our 2 representatives from Greystone, Todd and John, who you'll be seeing a lot more of at the board meetings. And Melissa, of course, who is the dedicated backup and so important for our budget numbers and accurate information for the bond. So thank you to them all. And with that, I will let Mike get started.
Thank you, Lois. Evening, trustees. After she said all that great stuff, I get to humbly tell you there's corrected slides in front of you on your desk. Apparently, when I was looking at the spreadsheets, I forgot to wear these, and I looked at the numbers from the wrong column, and basically, I think it's pages 47 or 48 through the end. Just the summary slides for the financials. A few numbers changed. The good news is the bottom dollar difference went down a little bit, so it was an error in a good way. And I'll go through the specifics as we get through the presentation. So this evening, as Lois just greatly summarized, just want to give you an update. Long overdue. We were about to do one right when COVID hit, and then everything sort of went sideways. So it's about a year past when we should be here. But tonight, I wanted to walk you through a couple things. If I can do this. Okay. I broke the computer already. Hold on, see if I can do it this way. Well, I'm trying to hit advance the slide. There it is. Sorry. I will say this is probably the largest file I've ever created, mostly because it's all pictures of 3 megabytes or larger. So it's great to see, but it's a clunker when it comes to uploading it and slicing through, so it takes a little time for the next slide to cycle up, that's why. But tonight, wanted to go through, as Lois mentioned, I think it's important to review the completed projects we've done with the bond money. I'll go through it quickly. You have the slides in front of you. And it's quite a bit. We have a lot of pictures to show you the successes we've had. And we include a little bit of project information there to give you kind of a litmus test of how we did with what we estimated and what it ended up costing. And once we go through those, turn it over to Greystone. They'll go through the projects currently still in construction. We have two big ones still going. And then, of course, what's coming up in the summer of '23, a project list that we're going to recommend that you approve of at the next board meeting. Then some projects in design, which get out to some of those projects and then passed. And then I'll come back in to talk about the financial summary, which is some detailed dive into the finances of what we spent to date, what's still out there to be spent, and then how we can get from there to the end and still cover everything that you as a board have already approved. And we'll go through the allocation process so you can dive into those details. And then at the end, basically there's a 3-page list of projects still remaining to be done that you've already approved. Most of those are deferred maintenance in that deferred maintenance allocation. We have a couple of IT projects left and a couple of little ones here and there. But basically, we have a plan to show you what's left. I will say, and I'll probably keep stressing this throughout the night, as of today, we did our best estimates on what these projects could cost. As you know, the last 2 years has been kind of crazy with cost estimating. It's really hard to predict. It's very unstable. We tried to be as conservative as we could to give us a little flexibility should the market keep going crazy. But we have a very solid estimate of what it takes to finish the bond projects that you've approved. And of course, as you've already surmised, we're a little bit short, tune of a little over $6 million to finish everything that you've approved. And we have a couple of recommendations on how to fund that so we can actually do everything that you've approved, which will get us through everything that was in the allocation process. And of course, whether along the way or at the end, happy to entertain any questions. I know this is a lot of information being thrown at you, so happy to answer anything as it comes up. So with that, I'll just kind of quickly go through the completed projects. I have a 2-page list. We've done quite a bit. As you all have said before, this is kind of a high school-centric bond. We did a lot of focus on the high school campuses, a lot of maintenance, a lot of new construction. We also did quite a few things at some other sites, modernized 2 elementary schools. We're able to convert our 21st century furniture project. Thanks to your approval, we were able to get that in there to get new furniture for every classroom at every school. We did the elementary schools this past summer. We're moving ahead to do the middle school and high schools this summer. We were successful in getting all of our support services off of school campuses. We moved grounds off of Novato. We moved fans off of Linwood. And at the same time, able to demo some very old and outdated buildings and build some new custom buildings that really fit our current operations. My favorite projects, we did a lot of those maintenance, those sewers, those unseen things that need to be done that people take for granted, but we need to update because we have very old campuses. And another big thing was the IT focus. The board really stressed we need to bring ourselves into the modern world when it comes to IT. So we've been able to upgrade our fiber along every campus, through every campus. Same time, we put in a new toolkit for each classroom, large screen TV with an iPad, a lot of wireless. We greatly enhanced our wireless backbone. So a lot of successes on the IT fronts. And I know the most important of late was the focus on air conditioning. And as the board approved as a new standard for the district, we are installing air conditioning capacity to every school. We have a couple left. We're focusing on Novato, Lou Sutton, and the Hill campus this summer, and that will complete all school campuses for air conditioning that didn't already have it. So with that, please, if you have any questions, I don't want to, let Maria get situated here.
So do we have any questions or, okay, so let's keep going.
Okay, so I will go through, and basically you see the approved SD budget that you as a board approved, and then our final project costs that ended up. And at the end of these, Todd will present a really nice summary slide of how accurate our cost estimating was from schematic design to the end of the project, and it was very, very good. We did some field projects at both high schools for the old rubber filled synthetic turf. We replaced it with cork. This is cork. Football fields are cork. So we got rid of a lot of hot and smelly fields. We also did our first AC project at San Jose Middle School, and this sort of set the standard for what we do at the other campuses. We install a heat pump in each classroom and then a condensing unit. We've migrated from this sample of note of, we did individual condensing units for every classroom. We now do one large condensing unit for a building of classrooms. So instead of 24 units like you see there at San Jose, we now have 5 at Rancho, and we'll continue to do that. It saves space, a little more efficient. Did a lot of roof work. San Ramon was called a Swiss cheese roof. Replaced that all with a new membrane roof. Worked out really, really well. Wouldn't go up there without your sunglasses. We also did some new buildings. This was the exciting part. New science building, Center for the Sciences at Novato, 10 classroom building. Did have a little bit of issue with some cost increases for some unexpected things we ran into as we were constructing this, but we're able to shift some funds around to make it work. Center for the Arts, 450-seat theater at Novato. Everybody's been in there. It's a great facility. We finally got the curtains installed a couple weeks ago. Really excited about that. But that was a very big success. Also a new science building at San Marin for their STEM program, which is great and well used by the program. And if you recall, we were originally going to modernize their existing Performing Arts Center at San Marin and realized it was just not worth the money. Too much work and too much money to do that. So board approved us to go ahead and demo existing. We built a brand new 250-seat Performing Arts Center, and it's working out really well. We also did the athletic field complex at Novato High. We turfed the existing baseball field. We relocated the softball field because we needed to relocate the tennis courts that were moved by the Center for the Arts. So big shuffle around the campus. And as you can see, we did basically 3 turf fields right south of the football field and 5 new tennis courts. And then San Marin, we did the same thing with their baseball and softball fields. Their fields did not move location. We just turfed what they had and corrected some drainage and contour issues with the surrounding areas, which was nice. Also, we installed in our brand new press box that was non-bond funded, we installed our PA system there, which is used every football game. Also, we were able to modernize those 2 elementary schools. We did Linwood, so we were able to remove the old central fans, kitchen, and supporting spaces, and then install a elementary school kitchen, which is in the lower left picture there. And then updated their multi-purpose room, and then redid every one of their classrooms with new floor, new ceiling, new lights, everything except the windows and doors, basically. So it turned out really nice. Moving on, we did more air conditioning at Linwood Olive and Loma Verde. Same principle. You can see now we went from those individual condensed units to the larger ones that support a whole building. That was the only change. Everything else remains the same. And again, classroom furniture, as I mentioned, for all elementary schools. These are a couple different campuses of what it looks like inside the classrooms. It kind of meshes really well with the modernized campuses at all of Linwood, but at every elementary school, we've seen very excited students and staff to have the new furniture, and it matches. The new maintenance operations and grounds facility that's out at C Street, we're able to construct a new right-size facility that meets the needs of that operation. So for the first time ever, all of those services are combined into one location, which has been very, very nice and effective, and I know Tony enjoys having all his staff under one roof to manage. I also did some more roofs, much needed at Novato High School. Again, we had a lot of active leaks, so we took 4 of the worst buildings and replaced those. And also we did, at this time, I believe, the Gordon Gym, or is it the old gym? The Gordon Gym. And then later on, we did the old gym as well. Again, my favorite topic, sewer work. Some pictures I can show you. Just a lot of old infrastructure in the ground that was either already failed. A lot of terracotta lines that handled sewer back in the day. We replaced them with the state-of-the-art PVC now. So reduced a lot of leaks and a lot of issues. Also, we were able to work on some of the curb appeal, if you will, for some of the elementary schools, Loma Verde and Lou Sutton. Worked with site committees to figure out what they wanted to do. It also aligned with our maintenance goals and picked some pretty good color palettes, in my opinion, and looking at Lou Sutton here, that they had a color they liked. They used their school color as their trim color, which is very nice and vibrant. And then at Loma Verde, which jokingly they now call Loma Azul, they replaced a lot of the green they had before with a nice blue. And again, the committee wanted to get a nice modern change, and it works really well. There is green trim on the interior of the campus, so but still looks really nice, and everybody's very excited about the new look. Also, we repaired and put on new stucco at San Marin High School to replace, or on top of the old shiplap wood, which was becoming a very hard maintenance item. So this turned out really well. We've got the colors that match the new buildings, and then the trim that the school desired. So it has a nice, modern, fresh look. Also did the Olive Avenue warehouse. This is where we centralized the new fan services. We moved out maintenance in half of that, so one half of that warehouse is transportation, and the other half is the food and nutritional services operation. They have plenty of refrigeration and freezer space, plenty of office space, and able to back in their trucks and really do what they need to do to get food products in and out. And also, I think they do equipment as well as they move equipment from site to site, especially since we're getting 2 new kitchens here. Oh, all right. I went too fast. At Olive, we also did the modernization. In addition, based on the board's approval, we relocated the front of the school to the Olive Avenue parking lot entrance. So we built a new admin building on that side, which you see in the lower left there. And in the back, we converted the old admin space into a much-needed 3rd kindergarten room. And we're able to put in some other support service spaces in that old office area as well. And it's really worked out well for the campus. It's increased the security and funnels the visitors through the front point of the school now. Again, this is the other gym roof at Novato High that we replaced. And we also did the warehouse out at Olive Avenue, which is in dire need of replacement. So we got some new roofs there. We also did this past summer air conditioning at Rancho. As you know, we did a kind of last-minute roof replacement unexpectedly, but it turned out really well, and through some really good contractors and some great oversight by Greystone, we were able to get the roof and AC completed before the start of school, just before the start of school, but it works. We also did roof replacements at San Jose Middle School and Hamilton School. We did the upper campus of Hamilton, and we did pretty much the entire campus of San Jose with the exception of the library, the office, and the gym. The top of the gym, but we did the locker room. And replaced a lot of dry rotted wood and holes, and so we're very excited to not have leaks in these buildings anymore. With that, I want to turn it over to Todd to go over sort of the projected cost versus the actual cost.
Thank you. So the purpose of this slide is more to give you a benchmark as to how we're doing We're just a little over halfway through your bond program as far as expenditures. These reflect completed projects where all the costs are in. And as you can see, we're doing pretty well. We're on the aggregate 1.08% under the approved budgets. And this is against the board-approved schematic design budgets. And that's not to say there's not red ink, because you'll see there's red ink here as well as green. Most of the overruns are in the more complicated projects where there's more prone to scope creep. And also in the earlier jobs, we tend to have more green ink than red. So what it basically tells us is we're trending well, and hopefully we can continue to stay on this path through the remaining projects. With that, I'll hand it off to John.
Thank you. So we currently have 2 projects under construction right now, one at Sinaloa Middle School and one at Pleasant Valley Elementary School. At Sinaloa, the project consists of a new kitchen, gym modernization, and exterior siding replacement. The exterior siding replacement is much like that of San Marin. Your approved schematic design budget of that was $7.6 million. And our costs to date are about 1.4. We also were able to improve the center courtyard at Sinaloa. The other project under construction is the new kitchen at Pleasant Valley Elementary School. Also included in that project is revamping the existing kitchen, turning it into a conference room within the multipurpose room. That approved schematic design budget was at $2 million. And we currently, project costs are about $300,000 through the end of October. Some projects we're looking forward to for the summer of 2023 include the Olive Elementary School. That's going to include the clear story windows, new paving at the parking lot along Olive, and then also the new garden that was displaced when we built the new administration building. At San Jose Middle School, we're looking at a new track and turf field, upgrading the kitchen and fire alarm at that facility, and then also going through an exterior paint project and signage. Luz Sutton Elementary School will include new air conditioning, as will Novato. At the Hill campus, we're looking at new air conditioning, upgrading the IT infrastructure, doing the classroom toolkit, and doing some roof replacement. Sinaloa will be much like San Jose, in which we're doing a new track and turf field. The middle schools will get new classroom furniture, as will the high schools. The district office will include an IT infrastructure upgrade, as will the Olive Avenue warehouse. Some of these projects are currently also in design. That includes the Novato High School, where we're going to upgrade the electrical switchgear. We're working with PG&E on that right now. The Hill campus, like I just mentioned, air conditioning, IT upgrades, and roof replacement. The track and fields at San Jose and Sinaloa. IT infrastructure upgrades at the district office, as well as Olive Avenue warehouse. And then the middle schools, we're going to do new classroom furniture and do the same at the high schools. With that, I'll turn it back over to Mike.
All right, now I get to overwhelm you with numbers and spreadsheets. Tried to keep these as simple as possible without making them impossible to see, so that the audience and folks viewing at home could participate and look as well. But right here is just an overview of the allocations that we had developed a few years back that you've approved. So it's basically the bond program funds broken down by allocation, and the column in the black there, the board approved allocation, is what you have approved per each allocation. And those sum up to, obviously, it's now over 222 million, because luckily we got interest on some of that bond money we sold before we were able to spend it. And so now that's the total bond program value there is 224.8 million. And then in the middle column is as of October 1st, straight out of our financial system, is everything that's been expended. In other words, everything we've written a check to pay for the bond projects. So to date, we have spent $147 million. That's out of the bank account, gone, paid off to the contractors. So what's left is the right column. Again, all the projects that have been presented to you over the last couple of years have been approved by you. You've approved, in essence, sort of a rough project budget, and that sum is about $77.7 million. So with that, I wanted to give you a little more detail on each allocation so you can see where the money went. So for example, the administration, we combine all the little things into one, but of the $4.3 million approved, we're about $2.6 million into it, have about $1.7 million left. For the bond issuance, we, as you know, you just approved the sale of the last remaining series. I think it's Series D. But we had $850 for the issuance. We spent those on the 3 issuances before, and the remaining $285 is soon to be spent, I think, here in the next month or so as we actually sell the last remaining $15 million of bonds. Moving on to the district-wide allocation. These are projects that kind of went district-wide. Also, the new buildings we built for the grounds maintenance and operations and the fans warehouse. Initially, we put the HVAC under here as well. But as you can see, approved allocations spent a little bit, and of the 29 million, we have about 10 million left to be spent. Moving on to deferred maintenance. This is a little bit busy slide. There's a lot of deferred maintenance out there. Again, looking at, originally it's about, I think it's 44 million. We made some adjustments along the way that were board approved. So that pot's about 42.9 million. Spent about 13 million to date, and roughly have about 29.8 million. Of note, this also includes that $15 million of bond sales that goes into this deferred maintenance allocation, and it's already included in these calculations. Just so the $42 million, that $27 million line item at the bottom is part of that. The 15 million is part of that 27 million. So if you're wondering where that money's going to go, that's where it's earmarked for. Moving on to the high school allocation, obviously all those new buildings. This one was a good chunk of the bond. It was about $78.6 million. Spent almost all of it, about $76.5 million, and we have about $1.9 million left as we continue project closeout for those large projects. Middle school allocation, about $19.5 million. Only spent about $4.5 million to date, and have about $15 million left to spend. Elementary, about $30 million, and we spent about $23.5 and have about $6.6 million left to spend. And then our one-to-world devices, if you remember, this was a 10-year program, $6 million allocation. We are through 5 phases, and then we have the remaining. So we spent about a little over half so far, and we have $3.3 million left in that one. IT infrastructure upgrade had about 11.6 million initially. To date, we spent about $4.4 million and have about $7 million left in that one. Just of note, that covers a couple different things. That covers the classroom toolkit, that covers the IT infrastructure upgrade, that will cover security cameras. All that got lumped into the IT umbrella in this allocation. And then our other allocation, this is what I think Lois was alluding to at the beginning. This was earmarked initially as other, and in parentheses, we always had C Street, the charter school, any other little things that weren't covered somewhere else. This $1 million is still sitting there. It has not been earmarked for any specific projects. It's just been approved by you as a $1 million allocation, and we'll be coming back in the future to ask for some more direction on how to spend this money. And in program contingency, this is sort of like looking into a checkbook ledger. I just wanted you to see how we started with what we started with and then how it ended up with where we are now. Once we started getting interest and other things, we did have a little bit of project savings, but as you know, some of that went to other projects right away. So this is sort of the pluses and minuses of that program contingency. So we started out a little over $2 million, and right now we currently sit with $714,000 in that program contingency. And then again, this is just sitting there, not earmarked for anything as of yet. And then our remaining Measure G bond funds. This slide I wanted to show, I just showed you sort of the checkbook, the money that's been physically spent or expended in the financial terms. That's the red column there. That's, we've expended $147 million. And then, so taking that from our program fund total, you have about $77.7 million left to spend. However, we do have a lot of purchase orders out there. We have contracts we are under, architects' designs, those kinds of things that have, even though we haven't written the check for that yet, we are under obligation to pay them for services they are currently working on. So when you account for that, we call those encumbered funds, not actually spent yet, but earmarked to be spent. That's about another $9.7 million. So we wanted to take that out off the table because we've already, well, we haven't physically spent it, but we're going to spend it, under obligation to spend it. So far column on the right is basically what is left for us to spend cash-wise, and it's about just a little under $68 million, $67.9 million.
Including the proceeds from allocation D?
Yes, this is all inclusive of all the bonds being sold. So with that, we're going to get into what's remaining, and I'm going to turn it over to Todd, who can talk about those.
So in the next 3 pages, there's 47 projects listed. I won't go through each one in detail. It's primarily deferred maintenance, a lot of roofs, a lot of paint, a lot of HVAC. The fields are in there at the middle schools. The pending projects, we've got this work at San Jose with the kitchen and the fire alarm work there, and a few other projects that are not terribly well defined. I think the main thing I want to go over with you is if you look at column 3, additional funds needed. This is the difference between our board-approved projects that were brought in, 2 years ago, Michael? 2 years ago for approval, and what we're currently projecting the cost to be. And where you look at the cost overruns, you'll see that they're primarily HVAC and roofing projects is where budgets have gone up. And those have been affected heavily by the Ukraine war and COVID. HVAC I'll put down to supply and demand. When COVID hit, every school district in the country started looking at their HVAC systems and trying to replace them to get more air changes per hour and better ventilation systems. So when the demand went up for HVAC units, so did the price. And we've been seeing that, and we're projecting that that's going to continue. There's also supply chain issues with printed circuit boards that have making units difficult to get, as evidenced by the 2 projects we had to push from this summer to next, and it's just continuing to be a problem. So we've escalated our estimates for HVAC projects to reflect that, and given ourselves hopefully enough wiggle room that our budgets will hold. Roofing is directly tied to the cost of petroleum. Almost all of the products are tied to the cost of petroleum, and with I don't have to tell you what gas prices have done and the cost of oil, so that's directly reflected. I think the other one that you'll see that's up considerably are the 2 middle school fields. And again, just about everything that goes into a turf field is either made of petroleum or requires equipment to construct. So again, more vulnerability there. So at the end of the day, we're short by about $6.346 million of having enough to complete everything that we were projected to do with that remaining $67 million that we have to spend, or almost $68 million. If anybody has any specific projects on that list that they'd like to talk about, I'm more than happy to. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just have a question about on page 49, and some of the items that you have listed, they seem to be together, and I'm wondering for more clarity So for example, when you say that the San Jose Middle School, there's the kitchen and there's the firearm. Well, obviously, a firearm alone is not $2 million, but you talk about the kitchen. So just for more clarity for us and the public, I'm just wondering, how much is the firearm?
Do you have that number off the top of your head for the fire alarm? It's about 350,000 for the fire alarm.
Okay. So I'm just wondering, there's a lot of that through the list, and so I would just like it more in a single, more priced out if possible. Other than that, I mean, congratulations on the items that have been completed. You've done a great job, and with the details, you've been able to make it not only useful for the students to learn, but also beautiful to the eye. So my other question is for the projects that still remain, but actually your question was any questions on this list, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to ask about the 2023 projects. I'll wait for later if you like. Okay, great, thank you. So as we look through these, you think, okay, well, let's prioritize most important, but it's just they all seem to have some urgency to it, and I'm sure you feel that urgency, and you're doing your best to get it completed. But there's some that really stick out, and for example, the air conditioning, at some of our schools, and we have the 3 schools that need the air conditioning for sure. And so, just wondering if there's a way that you can speed it up.
Well, unfortunately, the air conditioning projects need to take place over the summer break. It's the only window that's long enough for us to be able to achieve it. We just simply couldn't get equipment in time for the 2 that got postponed for a year.
And when you say the summer, can it be done during the summer before the students come back?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a
completing the
for sure
project.
thing?
Yes.
And then with those future projects remaining, the price will stay the same. Nothing's going to go up.
Well, again, these are estimated costs on the remaining HVAC projects. We've got escalation built in, and we've been reacting to the market costs. So we believe we have enough money budgeted to take care of the projects.
Okay, so we just keep our fingers crossed. We won't have any surprises. And just one more question. The furniture, it says there's this furniture list on the remaining bond project. I thought we already had furniture that we're all set up, except, in fact, we have too much furniture.
This is classroom furniture, and we did the K through 5 elementary school furniture this past summer. So this summer we're focusing on middle schools and high schools. So if you remember, we take out the old furniture, it gets recycled through donations to other school districts or recycled at a material recycling plant, and then we bring in the new furniture just for the classrooms. It's teacher desks and chairs, and then student desks and chairs.
Okay, I just thought the middle schools, all our middle schools were up to date on their furniture.
No.
Okay. Okay, but they have furniture.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
everybody has
obviously.
furniture. Some is a lot older than others.
Okay. And then we're not asking, and then we're asking, we already have a list of what schools need it, and so we're not doubling up on the furnitures, right?
Well, the goal is to get all new furniture for every classroom at every school. We did all the elementary schools last summer.
Whether they need it or not, we're gonna give them new furniture?
Well, I think the newest furniture people have, other than a little bit of PTA purchase stuff, is 30 years old.
So in your eyes, it's safer to get the new furniture
Yes,
for all,
yes.
whether some people may think, well, they don't need it.
I think it's the one time that the district has an opportunity to do this, and I've asked a lot of people who've been here a long time. Superintendent could maybe speak to this as well, with her experience here. I don't think the district's ever purchased new furniture as a whole for even like high schools or middle schools at one time, and Trustee Miller could probably
Sure.
talk about this, but it's a great opportunity. If you remember, the original project was new furniture for 1/3 of all our classrooms.
Right.
And
So,
you worked hard to help us get budget to do it for all classrooms.
so
Yeah,
trustee
that's fine.
Aguila, how about we finish the presentation because we still have, steps to fully fund the bond project suggested, because you're sort of leaping into prioritization, what's
Okay.
more important than not. So let's hear what staff has to recommend, and then we'll just
I
bring it
just,
back.
I just wanted to make, I'm done with my questions. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't overspending on furniture or having too much furniture.
Well, yeah, well,
That's all.
let's
Thanks.
get assurances of that, and that's something we can discuss, but I just want to bring it back to completion. And let's hear what staff has a recommendation on page 52, which I think we were ready to go to,
Just
unless you're
real
ready
quick,
to
President,
finish up on.
I just had
okay.
one comment I wanted to address. One of the changes that was made from the version that you were sent versus I think they're purple sheets. If you look on page 50, about the middle of the page, there's an IT program infrastructure holding budget. I had erroneously left this line item out. And this tells you that right now we have about $4.4 million in our IT allocation that's not earmarked for anything. It was some project savings from low bids for the IT upgrade. It was mostly savings from initially our classroom toolkit was supposed to be a totally different technology package, and it got changed to the TVs and more of a wireless-centric iPad type thing. So that line item is actually sitting there as a savings, and as we get to the recommendations to how to fund the $6 million difference, the $2 million comes from that $4 million pot. The IT allocation, the IT upgrade / toolkit. It's a line item that's, sorry, I completely apologize. Again, going too fast without my glasses, I missed this line, and it's what predicated some of the number changes. And not to take away Todd's presentation, but originally, I think your original sheet said we needed $6.8 million, and now we're down to $6.3 million. And as Todd's going to go over the options to fund, I just want to make sure you understand the $2 million coming from the IT is from this pot of money that's not earmarked for anything else as of yet. So this 3-page list of remaining bond projects includes security cameras, includes IT upgrades at the DO, at Olive Avenue, at Hill, and classroom toolkits at Hill. So everything we needed to do at every site is going to be done, and we still have this pot of money left over for extra. So I just want to make that clear, and I apologize for being confusing before I caught that this morning.
Okay, so trustee Butler, before we go on to page 52, trustee Butler's got a couple of questions on the list, the lavender list that we got today.
And then, so you went over the projects for the summer that are for '23,
Yes,
and then we have projects in design,
yes.
plus we have these 47 projects. Is there duplications?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the projects
I just want to double check.
in design or in for 23 are included in this list.
Okay.
This is everything beyond what's currently in construction.
And the ones that are not in for summer '23 and not in design yet, you have those calendared out onto what year, basically?
Yeah, for the most part, we've
Most
got
part.
about 2 years to go.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we've got summer 24 and summer 25.
Okay.
We're basically wrapped up at that point, and we're still kind of juggling numbers a little bit. So one of the things we're working on right now is we're seeing the market slow down, and it's a terrible thing to say, but I'm hoping it continues to slow down a little bit with the Fed raising the interest rates and kind of cooling things off. So kind of the longer we wait, hopefully the numbers get better, but at the same time, you've got real need on roofs and HVAC, and the procurement times are so long, up to a year to get units and fire alarm equipment and stuff. So we're looking at kind of converging lines to figure out when the optimum point is to put these on the street to bid. But ideally, we want to wrap everything up by the end of the summer of '25. We'll probably have work that continues a little bit into the fall.
And then just, yeah, so we do have, within these purple pages, there's some pockets of undesignated money, is from what I can tell. The 1 million, the elementary school allocation set aside, the 2.5, that's just
Yep.
kind of sitting there, but nothing's been designated, not a particular project, or?
If you remember, it is sitting there, and the board approved, originally, we said, hey, let's divide this up and give it to each elementary school,
Right.
with the exception of Linwood and Olive, because they got modernized. And we were still doing the Linwood and Olive projects, and the board smartly said, hey, hold it for contingency. We did dip into some of that for contingency. We were able to replace it with some cost savings. So right now, that's sitting there with the assumption that at some point, when Olive and Linwood completely close, we will come back to the board and say, do you still want us to divide this up based on student population or whatever process you'd like to use to give that to each elementary school, with the exception of Linwood and Olive, for local projects that meet the bond language, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it does.
So it's
I
available if,
recall, yeah,
okay.
okay. And then the Hamilton, my last question, sorry. The Hamilton site project, that's been sitting there for a while.
well, if you remember when we divided up the
Right.
middle school, we did 4.25 million at San Jose and
Right.
Sinaloa. We met with committees, we got their project, we started working on it. We haven't met with Hamilton yet on their committee to see what they'd like to do, but it is sitting there for the local use for
Yeah,
aid.
because I think the last time it was supposed to be done in the springtime to meet with
We-
them.
we were- well,
Try to find and do
We're gonna
something.
try, and then, obviously, some timing went out the window on some of these projects,
Okay.
but it is still
That
there.
is still in the back,
undefined.
still on the radar. Got it.
I've formally talked to him. I haven't sat down with the committee to say, what do you want to do?
They're aware,
Principal knows
okay.
that it's there.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Okay. Trustee Gasson.
So 2 questions. One, I think you answered, because I was wondering if some of these things we delay, if there's that time to, like, the cost to drop, because I feel like we're always trying to catch this increase. And so it's making it hard when we're looking at this and already having a shortfall. So if I heard you correctly, we'll see if we can nail that decline, but that there's also the consideration that we have to order stuff with a backlog. Because I was thinking originally, if stuff is starting to decline, but you're gonna get locked in at a price, so even if it continues to decline, we would be locked into an order price for supplies and stuff, correct?
Yeah, one possible scenario is to get some of the 24 projects out to bid in the fall of '23, rather than waiting till after the first of the year. Give us a little more time to get it. We're kind of watching for the bottom, and hopefully we can time the bottom of the market and put our projects for 24 and 25 out to bid at the bottom of the market, and be ready to time that. So we get the best pricing and we still leave ourselves plenty of time to procure materials.
Okay, and then the second is, I was trying to sync up with the principal's report about stuff. So when we say something is closed on here or finished, it means all of the punch list or all of this, I mean, that everything is completely done, that there's not something that they're missing that we're gonna still, or is there stuff that's still ordered that's factored in that hasn't been installed, or?
Can't think of anything.
What about the,
So that's equipment, we're working with maintenance on who, it wasn't part of the bond project. If we had any leftover funds, we were gonna try to purchase it. We used all of our funds on the San Marin project as an example. So we're working with Tony and Lois for general funds on how to purchase maintenance equipment. And they're also working on maintenance contracts with Field Turf to help rectify the weed situation, as we've called it. And then to answer your question, Trustee Gasson, when we close out a project, from the project perspective, that means punch list items are done. Everything in the contract, scope of work is done. And sometimes there's leftover project money that if there's other items that the site would like to get, we try to use that leftover money to help them with that. But a lot of times of late, we expend all of our funds because costs have just gone up. But it means we completed the project work as defined in the project.
Okay, and I'm trying to coordinate all these papers, so I apologize if I've missed this somewhere, but I think I saw that Rancho was saying that the roof still is leaking. So is that just because that's gonna be an after-fact fix, but not,
That's all been fixed.
okay,
I just got wind of this list, I think Friday afternoon. I took a peek at it. I didn't know that was out there, but a lot of what's on there is maintenance work that would be Tony's folks.
I totally
And-
get that. I mean, I did, and I've already picked it apart, because some things actually
But-
are.
But I know, I think, and I'm not sure when this query was made, but I know probably a month ago, those issues were outstanding, and we've completed them. And as you notice, we're still closing out the AC and roof project at
Right.
Rancho. So, but the roof is sound, doesn't leak anymore, and we've buttoned up all the flashing for the items you've seen on that list.
I would add to that, there's warranties in the project that go 1 to 2 years depending on the specifics, and roof guarantees for 10 years beyond. So just because something is closed out, it doesn't mean that the contractor won't be returning to make repairs or corrections.
Todd, when we met with us the other day, you were talking about the AC is kind of a big deal for the schools that didn't get it last summer.
Mhm.
When will you, do you think you'll be going out to bid for that?
John, have you got those calendared? I think sometime, hopefully, so I got some information actually on the way down here. It's a very fluid situation that we're looking at 20 to 24 weeks for the carrier units. So what we were, again, we're waiting on that price line to drop, but at the same time looking at procurement. So I think we're going to probably move our bid dates up to November for that work. We've got most of the equipment already, but we want to get our prices locked down so we're in good shape for the summer for anything else that we might have to procure.
Okay, thank you.
Were there any other questions on the remaining bond projects?
Yeah, Trustee Miller does.
Questions I don't want to get ahead of you.
No, we're on the remaining bond project list, so
Okay,
Questions?
so that's great. So when I looked at this is going to take me a couple of minutes to get through. I look at the remaining bond project list, and which is on purple page 48, 49, and 50. And then I turn back to, let me see if I make my notes. My notes said turn back to page 39, and on page 39, hang on, it's deferred maintenance. 38, yeah, 39 is deferred maintenance. So the view I'm looking at this whole thing is separate from all this paperwork and all the conversation in this room. If I walked outside and walked around my district, where do we have issues that still exist? And some of them are in construction projects that we've identified, and some of them are on this deferred maintenance list, and some of them that we have to fund aren't on either pieces of paper. We know we're going to have a conversation with the charter school here shortly, and it's not on any one of these pieces of paper, but it's got to come out of the money that's at the front page. So the report here is kind of a nice paper exercise, but right now I've identified 3 separate piles of requirements, charter school, deferred maintenance list, which looks like you're based on page 39. It looks like there's $27 million, $28 million on almost the last line that is additional work that's getting scheduled, plus the bond issue. So what I'm trying to do is figure out how can we look at this thing all together. And the one piece that's not on any of this piece of paper is what does it take to keep the $1 billion in buildings that we own functioning and operational? And this bond project, the 2 bonds that we've floated over the last 2 decades, have raised $100 million and $220 million, something like $300 million. And in that time, which is over the span, it's about $10 million a year that we've asked the community to fund, and we've invested in schools. And in that time, we've upgraded the quality of our buildings dramatically. Roofs don't leak. Santa Maria has siding that isn't falling off. Sewer lines, I mean, some things like sewers and roofs are repeatable failures, but we are dramatically, our technical debt in our physical platform is far smaller now than it was 20 years ago. We had, buildings were falling down. So maybe we don't need to be spending $10 million a year to keep the buildings alive, but I'll bet you it's 3 or 4 million. And you guys could probably, I mean, you do this for a living, I'll bet you could, come up with a better number than I came up with. But it's not 0 and it's not 10. So when I look at this money that's left for deferred maintenance in this budget, It looks to me like we only have enough money to go out like another 6 years or so, picking up $4 million a year in deferred maintenance. Additional items are gonna show up on this list because the sewer line someplace failed, or the roof someplace failed, or the parking lot failed, or the water system failed, or we need better transformers, power supply on a campus because we're adding buildings or air conditioning, or, I mean, this stuff happens. You don't know it's coming, but you and I know that it's gonna happen. So what I'm trying to figure out is, in this big picture, we've already spent the money we've spent. We got a bond project list that we've all approved and like. I'm trying to figure out how do we get from here to 10 years from now when we can ask the community for another bond measure, because we're not gonna be able to, they're not gonna say yes to anything for 10 years. And we know we have this ongoing need. So my big concern isn't just the remaining bond projects and the remaining deferred maintenance list. I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna cover the need that we don't even know and cover the item that's not mentioned, the charter school. So I'm trying to get the 30,000 or 60,000 foot level and say, how does this all fit together? And as useful as all this information is, it doesn't answer that question for me. So I'm interested in a follow-on meeting of some kind that takes that higher level view and looks at it strategically. Maybe it's led by our CFO or an outside consultant firm that comes in and does a physical assessment and better guesses the future. So this has all been really valuable. I spent most of yesterday afternoon plowing through it. But I am concerned that we don't have our hands around this problem as well as we should right now. So there's my kind of grand statement.
So
Yes, sir.
on the issue of deferred maintenance that's in the future, I think that gets into a capital cost budget versus an operational cost budget and a set aside, and maybe you're right to ask to have some additional information come back, because I think that would be our chief financial officer trying to come up with a plan to deal with normal deferred maintenance from a yearly 3-year budgetized approach. And currently, it's never been enough in this business, as you know.
No, that's why we have buildings falling down and roofs leaking. Yeah.
Okay, so I greatly appreciate that. It's something that I won't say keeps me up at night, but it's something to think about. Buildings, we've done a lot, but buildings are constantly getting old and falling down and things are breaking. And next Tuesday, we'll be talking about one item that isn't on these lists that we need to look at. But there's a couple of things I want to correct from what you said. There is money in this list to cover what the charter school needs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
there's an
didn't see it.
allocation
Good,
for
good.
that.
Okay, good.
So that's
I
fine, we
missed it.
just need to decide what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the other point is, everything listed there, as they will continue to say, Mike and Todd, is that the money, as long as we can fund that 6 million, which they have a solution for, we can cover all of the projects that you have previously approved. So everything on that unfinished list can be taken care of. It's a matter of, is that what you really want to do? And that's the purpose of tonight, is to figure out, is this how you want us to move forward? And what you're asking, Trustee Millerick, is a whole nother issue that we will need to study and talk about on a regular basis. Right. Yes.
If I could, Trustee Miller, just for clarification, we use the term deferred maintenance in extremis, and the $44 million list that you approved about 2 or 3 years ago was just the list of deferred maintenance, leaky roofs, broken water lines, those kinds of things that we needed to make our sites warm, safe, and dry. But it by no means was an exhaustive list of the deferred maintenance needs of the district, and we knew that going in. This is what I'd call a target-rich environment when it comes to deferred maintenance, very old school sites that need a lot of love and attention. But absolutely, I think in the future, trying to develop a list would help at least identify the annual cost you were talking about to get done. We did take a big bite out of the apple here, but we didn't quite get the whole.
With thanks to community and the property taxpayers, this district now is in a position where we are the largest property holder and the property is not falling down, and it will serve our students well. And, you know, wonderful things have happened because they stepped forward and put the money on the table so we could do this. I just don't want to then say, okay, it's done and it's forever done, because over time, we're going to end up right back where we were if we don't have a plan. So, with gratitude to you guys for the work that's been done.
Okay, so any more questions? Okay, Trustee Jacobson on remaining list.
Can I ask something similar that's maybe not what we're actually doing right now, but sort of?
Yeah, no, go ahead, because
Okay.
the context of,
Yes.
of things that fit this and that don't fit this, we'll want to identify and have
Okay.
an understanding, so it's fine to discuss it right now.
I think that in line with looking at the future and knowing what the landscape is of what we need to be doing, I would really like to know how we're taking care of maintenance, how we're funding and staffing maintenance of these fields and buildings that cost us lots of money that we want to keep in good working condition now.
Well, this is music to my ears. As long as I've been on this board, I've been advocating for what I call a capital replacement fund, or large enough reserves to handle the amount of deferred maintenance that needs to be done and will need to be done. But that money comes out of our operational general fund, so we would have to work those dollars in with the other operational expenses we have, mostly with our bargaining units. That's how I perceive the issue. But I think that going forward, this is a running start. There may even be some advantages. I don't know yet. I wouldn't say for sure that there'd be anything left over here to start a high level of reserve for deferred maintenance going forward. But I think the board is probably, now they got all these nice new buildings, they got to run all these air conditioners, they got to keep these fields up, kept up. There's probably it makes sense to take a good long look at, from an operational maintenance perspective, what it's going to take to do that, and then adjust our budgets accordingly. So that's how I explain it. I don't know. Does that sound about right? So I get it, and I'll be here when you guys start talking about reserves for deferred maintenance.
Just, it might be something like we did with the pension, where we set aside $1 million for every year. It might be something where we make that a focus. Just throwing, we're not having that discussion now, but it's just referring back to an idea that we did before. We have all these funds that Lois presents at audit actuals at, first interim, second interim, Fund 14, Fund 21, Fund 25, and they all have balances in them, so.
And if you recall,
But I think there's a logistical part that needs to be talked about. Like, how are we actually going to get this done? Like, we know that the rake hasn't been bought. We had someone come here and tell us about how they just need this rake to keep the fields in good maintenance. That was some months ago. It still hasn't happened. And like the fields and the maintenance, there's still a conversation about who's in charge and when it's going to happen. So where is the tangibles?
So
Go ahead.
I can tell you the rakes are not going to solve the maintenance problem with the fields. It's a much bigger deal to take care of turf than to give your employees a rake. So in fact, you will be seeing in an upcoming meeting a proposal to hire, thank you, field turf to come every month to maintain our fields, so that way we get to keep the guarantee. We know that they're being looked at by people who know the fields, understand them, and it's a much better way to keep them upgraded. It's not going to be cheap because we have so many of those fields, but it's not outrageous either. So I'll be bringing that proposal to you to make sure our fields are well cared for.
So does that work? That it's
Yes, thank
it's
you.
another conversation and another set of priorities going forward. But for now, and just to keep on the agendized item of what we're discussing, trying to keep us focused on the bond project stuff. So but Trustee Miller, you had a comment on that?
Back to page 39, which is your deferred maintenance list. Thank you, sir. Perfect. I see a bunch of numbers in black on the board-approved allocation and expended funds. So all items, all except the very last item, looks like pretty much they've spent them, and there's nothing left to spend except for the last couple of rows. But there's $27 million sitting down there, so I'm curious. So it looks like all of this has been done. All of sewer work was done, Novato High School sewer work was done, San Ramon re-roof was done. So the first question is, what's that $27 million? That's an awful lot that's a big chunk to only be one lump. Can we get a detail of what that is?
Yes, all of those projects are in the 3 pages of the planned projects to come. I spelled out each individual,
Oh, so it
Deferred
turned to
maintenance
which
project.
page? Which page do I look at?
48 through 50. All of the, most
Oh,
of
so
those,
project remaining, pages 48 to 50, which adds up to 74 million.
right, not all of them are deferred maintenance. but
Yeah,
a
see,
lot of
that's what I can't make any sense of. Can you split that out and give me a report, give us a report that identifies what's in the 27 million and what's not in the 27 million?
Correct,
Because
yes.
otherwise I add these up and I get nuts numbers.
No, that was my last 2 weeks, but yes.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah.
No, easy to do, but just to
Okay.
point to you is the
Perfect.
27 million is earmarked specifically.
Is in here already, I just gotta, okay, I just
Right.
gotta
Actually-
segregate it out.
Because we had to slip some projects due to delays, we're gonna be asking for a little bit more because some pushed from 23 to 24.
Every time I talk to you, you want a little bit more money, I don't know. So, okay, that helps you, thank you very much, I will look for see how that splits out. And then what was the rule for putting stuff in the deferred maintenance versus on the site list? The Sinaloa siting is handled on one list, but the San Marin siting is handled on another list. So I can't figure out your thinking about deferred maintenance, because you're right, deferred maintenance means a lot of different things depending the sentence you put the words in. It could be a funding model, it could be a actual projects that need to be done that haven't been done, it could be a lot of things. So it's helped me understand why we categorize them, or is it just confusing and I gotta just make sense of it?
So typically, something goes on deferred maintenance when it has a prescribed lifetime. So for example, an HVAC unit that's going to last 15 to 25 years, or a roof that's gonna last 15 years. It's a recurring event with a prescribed term. Whereas something like the San Marin skin is more of a once every 30 or 40-year occurrence, and it's not something that we would consider to be a deferred maintenance project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm still not quite sure I understand why some things got put on site budgets. But what I was looking for was a spreadsheet. So here's all the projects by project number. Here's the dollars for the project. Here's the site they applied to. When I get stuff in a deferred maintenance pile, but it doesn't show up on the San Marin site list, I can't tell how much money we spent at San Marin versus Novato versus Loma Verde, because they're not categorized on this report that way, although I know they physically exist on only one campus.
No, I perfectly understand, and I think part of our challenge is when we do a project and go out to bid, we'll combine a deferred maintenance project with another project, and as a project, it's lumped together, and it's hard sometimes financially to split out those things. I will say at the end of the bond, the goal is to put everything in the right allocation, so at the end of the bond, you can get a very detailed look at where every dollar went, like what you're talking about now. It's just right now, it's really hard, the way we've issued projects and contracted some
So
projects.
I guess my ask to Greystone is to resolve that sooner than later. Before we decide how we're gonna spend all the rest of this money, I'd like a better, understandable report I can work from, because that confuses me, and if I'm confused, I make bad decisions.
Understood. By way of an explanation, we combine things into projects for economies of scale and getting through DSA. And as Michael said, sometimes we have to reverse engineer it to break that back down and for you to be able to look at it the way that you want to.
I got it, and I appreciate the economy. that doesn't mean I don't need to understand it for management purposes. Thank you very much.
So I just want to make, look for consensus here at the same time. I don't want to be given direction that's outside of the budget. I don't know what the norm is, but I would, similar to what Trustee Millick was saying, at some point, we ought to be able to get the matrix that he was describing, even though we plugged them all into a single line item, there ought to be a way to break them out or subdivide that project down to what it was. But at the same time, I don't know how much of a priority that is right away, but maybe that's something we could be building as we close out or something.
Understood. So what I'm hearing you're asking for is by site and by category.
Yep. Yeah, because it's the public entity with a lot of transparency, a lot of questions, a lot of different ways that people like to look at different things. I think even though you efficiently lumped in deferred maintenance with the site project to take advantage of the, contractor being on site to do it, et cetera, it would, for the public's sake, at some point, if they could see a total dollar amount per site as well as total dollar amounts for deferred maintenance items, what's new and what that type of thing. But at the same time, I'm asking for this, but I don't know what that's going to cost me, so I want to kind of know. I think maybe it's like think about it and then and come back and maybe make a suggestion along that lines. I mean, is that because I don't want a single trustee to say, hey, this is what I want and order up $50,000 worth of analysis.
I want us to decide.
Yeah, right. I know. So that means we all got to know what that is, and
Yep.
so I'm trying to formalize your request into something that starts out with us saying this, we need more detail at a future point, and have you come back and tell us what that is and what it might.
Understood. I think
yeah.
the reason that we don't a lot of times break stuff down by site is there's temptation to look at parity for funds allocated between sites, and need doesn't recognize parity. Need is a by site and basis, and parity doesn't follow those rules.
Well, fortunately for you, that's our job.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why I'm interested.
Meaning we set the priorities and. Yeah. So Trustee Millrick wants to get to page. What is it? It's 51 or 52? 52. All right. So can we? You want to get to page 52? Okay. So, but I have to make sure that we're good to move on. So this is, that's what I want to do, Mr. Trustee Mack. But I'm equal in power to all of you, and so it's important that everyone here has an opportunity. And what I'm asking before we ask another question, you guys, we can move on unless whatever it is that needs to be asked, commented on, is relative to the remaining bond project list that we are looking at. So if there's no further question? Okay. All right. So then I'm hearing from the board, Trustee Aguila, if you can hold on, we're going to come back, but we're going to come back after we get through page 52. So write it down. All right, so let's get back to the presentation.
All right, so briefly, I'll touch on the second box there in page 51, which identifies the shortfall as $6,346,403. And then we'll jump to slide 52, which describes how we propose to make up that shortfall. And Lois, I'm going to need your help with the first one of these, which is the shift of funding for the IT Wonder World, the Chromebooks, to the general fund for a savings of $3.345 million.
So we have talked about this before. The need for Chromebooks does not end when the bond ends. The district needs to come up with a way to build into their budget on an annual basis the need for device replacement. And while we work out a budget that can do that, we luckily have one-time money that can be used to meet the need currently. So it is my proposal, and I know you've all heard it from me, that we move that cost out of the bond and allow the bond to pay for facilities and the district to take over the responsibility for student device replacement. So that's where that proposal comes from.
So the second item is about as close to a no-brainer as I think we'll get. It's a credit back from Wright Contracting, the amount of $944,000 for the Center for the Arts at Novato High School. And Wright Contracting is kind of unique. They interpret their guaranteed maximum price contract almost as a cost plus. When they get all done with their project, usually 6 months to a year later, they do an audit of their books, and anything that they made above and beyond what they contracted for their fee, they credit back to the district. They're not contractually compelled to do that, but they've done it on every project we've worked with them on. So we realized a windfall of $944,000 for that. And then the last item is transfer from that fund on page 46, I think is where it is, for that IT set aside for of $2,056,636, which totals $6,346,403. So that's our proposal about how we get to zero.
Okay, now you got questions. All right. So Trustee Mack was patient during the prior session, but okay, all right.
I have a clarification. So
Okay.
when we're talking about this additional needed funds of the 6.3 million, because I've got these new purple sheets, I don't know now, that includes those items that you were talking about, like the holding budget, IT, the elementary school allocation set aside, the other allocation budget of 1 million. So that's how so those amounts are in that shortfall still. So technically, we have not only balanced it with those transfers, but you also have some unidentified extra money in the original. Okay, cool, thanks, sorry.
And we still have $714,000 in what we refer to as topside contingency too. Correct, yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I just want to say, you guys, that's a lot of money, and you guys wrapped it up nice and tight, and I really appreciate you finding that 6.3. That's great. When I go through this list of 70, whatever, the big number, there are 3 line items in there which require us to make decisions. Well, really 2. 500,000, it's going to be for Hamilton. We have to figure out what that is. 2.5 million for the elementaries. We have to decide what that is as a group. And I don't know if we're going to hand that out on a pro rata basis to each of those schools and let them decide or what, but we got to figure that out. And then $1 million for a mystery line item, which I think we all agree. I think my intent was it was going to be eventually for the charter school. So 3 million actually. So I want to make clear that is what we need to do as a board to figure out what to do with those 3 line items and going forward. That said, I think they're getting to the whole maintenance issue, and really, or it's not even really maintenance. There's remaining capital projects that we haven't touched yet that involve landscaping. We landscape the front and the courtyard maybe, but we don't landscape the classrooms. In other words, the fields that the kids are on every day and that we rent out. Also, if I recall correctly, and Mike, correct me if this got fixed, we did not have any ability to landscape the area at San Marin High School between the theater and the science building. That's just still kind of, we're making do with what's there.
We did sort of design it out as about $1 million to do that.
Oh, you have a design though?
Well, we had a rough design from the
Oh,
landscape
right,
architect.
and you've
yeah.
costed it out, okay.
Well, it was $1 million.
Yeah, well, I'm not even gonna go there yet. But I'm just trying to point out the gap. So that's one gap. I think after we have our meeting on the 25th, we're gonna hear a whole lot about what needs to be done to our fields, because just like the schools, they haven't been touched from an infrastructure perspective since they were installed. We've tried to resod them multiple times and failed. We have failing irrigation systems. We have gopher infestations, and we have no way of managing them. And where I'm going is, I don't know if there's a way to do this, but if there is a way to do this, I would love to find some way for us to just basically tear down each one of the fields that we need and put in gopher wires, put in new irrigation systems, and either reseed them or resod them. But that's something else I want to put out there beyond that 3 million, if it's possible. And let me see what else. And then maintenance equipment. And I'm hearing about this rake. I'm just wondering, is there any other equipment that we're lacking? I don't think there is necessarily. It's probably operational budget stuff we can pick up, but want to factor that in. And then to Ross's point, I want us to take this is our last chance, take a long, hard look at, is there any deferred maintenance things we haven't done? And I got a feeling you've been pretty thorough. I just want to double check. And I'm not putting you on the spot now, but I'm just saying, is there? Okay, and we need to see that too. Yes. Okay. And then ultimately, getting to Trustee Jacobson's question about annual maintenance, well, and I think Ross brought this up too, really, actually it's more Ross now I think about it. Annual maintenance, good news is, we've got $5 million in the budget going forward. So we don't need to do a separate fund necessarily unless it's not enough. But we need to understand what is enough. And what I'm trying to do is just kind of wrap this up from a 30,000-foot view, what's left. And right now, I think the most pressing thing is what to do with that 3 million, those 3 different line items. It's on us to decide where they go. And then to decide, when we see on the 25th, the extent of what's going on. And, I had a pretty lengthy meeting about it. And there's a lot. What are we going to do about it? Thanks.
Any more questions or comments? Okay. So tonight, we are giving no direction. We're making no decisions. We're taking in the information, trying to get clarity, and I'm sure more questions may come up in the interim. But I believe it's our next meeting, or is it we have a scheduled meeting to make decisions on this coming up. I think it's 2 meetings from now. Yep.
I would love, this has worked before in the past, to listen to your conversation. Thank you. And get direction, like on the things that Trustee Mack was talking about. So I could imagine that we had talked in the past about giving the charter school similarly everything that our elementary schools got. And maybe we could price that out, see how close it gets if you want to allocate the $1 million to them, and then sit down with the charter school and figure out what else they might need. I mean, that's something you could give direction on tonight. Any of those 2 things, if you have feelings about them. And I guess we also, because we need to move forward, we have the projects that are currently moving forward already. But then there's this list of future projects we haven't really started on. They have dates, but do we keep moving forward with that? We need to hear from you. Are you planning on, do you think there might be some changes? Do you want all the projects that you originally planned for us to move forward with, and then bring you regular updates as to how the budget works with all of them? That's the kinds of things we need to hear tonight to know, because these guys just keep going. It's you can't plan today for something tomorrow. You have to plan a year ahead. So they're always moving forward with getting these projects, and I don't want to put energy into something that you don't want us to fulfill.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Thank you. That was helpful. So where I am thinking, and when I'm looking at everything in its entirety, obviously I'm a little concerned because I'm watching and I understand, and thank you for explaining the reasons that some of these items are increasing, like the track and field expenses. So I'm sitting here thinking, as we've been talking about, we get down to where there's not as much money left, and the uncertainty in the economy, and being able to do some of these things. So for me, I think when we talk about the leftover projects, I think we need to prioritize and figure out timelines, because if we're looking at the fields, I don't disagree, that we I don't know what I'm trying to say. I know we need to do the fields, but they're a huge expense, and so if we're going on that, and it takes up 200,000 or 300,000, that takes off, you know, a couple of these little items that we really need to do. So I think it would be my impression that we need to come up with a priority list so that you guys know what to go out to bid. Do you want to say something? Sorry.
I just wanted to say, I was not of the mind that any work being done on the field would come out of the bond. That-
These,
That's, I mean, okay.
If it gets fixed,
Okay.
it gets fixed, that's all.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a possibility, but
well, I mean, the middle school, the, what is it? The track and field, so I'm lumping it all.
Oh, okay.
in. But, well, that's a good clarification, though. So any work that we're doing on the fields is something different. But this even, when we're looking at the amount that we allocated to both, remember we were trying to divide a pool of money that we had left over. We gave San Jose and Sinaloa 4.2 million, and you're already looking, and I understand these are just estimates, but 5.4 million, which is an additional 1.2 million for San Jose, and that's just on a good day, maybe, you know, so.
But
I'm
it's accounted for in our accounting that.
I
mean,
understand that.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, that's just a guess. So let's say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm still, the San Marin baseball, all that stuff, how much it doubled in cost, and we were committed to it. I'm a little shy on this kind of stuff now that, you know, if we've got this. So I think we should try to help define a priority list, because if we go out and we get all this, then we could end up with no money and not being able to do anything. And I don't want to be where we promised somebody something and we can't do
And
it.
are you talking at a priority list of the third category, the ones that we aren't truly committed to now?
Even the ones that,
I mean, we have said we're committed, we made the decision, and this is certainly something you can change, that we made the decision that the middle school fields we're pretty much committed to. It would seem not a good decision to say, no, we aren't doing those.
I'm not. What I'm saying is you asked about the list of remaining things. Those are on it. There is significant cost, and if we're going to be going down this list, then we should identify that we're definitely doing the fields, because if the cost goes up like another $500,000, you have other things on here that then that's going to take
So
money
I-
away from.
I think what I'm hearing that we need to do is bring back an item for you with the things that are in that third category of approved allocations but not yet really committed. The project could go away and we wouldn't have really any lost costs or anything significant. And then that would be the list in my mind that you would prioritize.
Right, that was my understanding of one of the elements that would be helpful to you.
Okay. Yep.
So, and again, keeping in mind that we will do the best to stay within our, but, you know, if something, we're in the middle of, you know, doing the field, and we're gonna have to start making decisions on the rest. The second thing, for me, I mean, I think that we've done super well, and I mean, the sites look great with the new siding, and just feeling better, like with the new furniture and just safer overall. But there's some fundamental things when I'm looking at, and I really believe that the elementary schools need to have their allocation. Having said that, I took a step back and looked at our entire district and said, okay, it's everyone, you know, we ended up in this situation where some of the schools had AC, some of them didn't. And we ended up there because we went to the schools and said, well, what do you want? And this was our priority. And it's so hard when you have so many things that need to be fixed. You try to figure out as a community at that time what is important. Well, then it shifted and it became everyone should have AC. So we've tried to catch up with that. When I look at and talk to the sites, you know, there are things like shade structures. I've been to only like 4 or 5 campuses within the last 2 weeks, and 2 of them are set on doing their own shade structure things. One of them, I told them to talk to you because I happen to know that it wasn't okay to do what they were planning, so I tried not to bust any bubbles on that. But it's important. Our kids need to be safe. We need to have shade. We need to make sure. I heard, you know, I saw something, I think, in the thing from the principals. We have AC on our sites, but is it in all of the rooms that we need to have it in? You know, even though we said it was AC, I don't know, there was reference to it not being in a certain area. water filling stations seems like a no-brainer, it shouldn't be that hard, but, maybe do all the sites have water filling stations now? Just fundamental things that, I feel like we should have just uniform throughout our campuses. And then also, going along with, I'm sure it wasn't considered at the time, and I don't know if can be funded elsewhere or what the expense would be, but it was very impactful for me to go to the Novato Police Department's, the presentation they did at Novato High. I think we need to look and figure out what are the things that we can do to make our campuses safer. I know we can't fence them, but what are the things that it's going to take to bring them up to the level that they advise? And apparently they can come out and do an evaluation for us and give us some ideas. And so I just don't want to miss the opportunity to figure out how do we do that too, as we're talking about the last little bit of money and we're looking at all of our schools and making them similar.
Okay, so at some point, we're gonna have to bring this back and try to build some consensus around what would be direction or preferred, or the additional information we're gonna want to help finalize the next phase of this remaining bond project list. So I'm gonna recognize Trustee Mack.
Completely agree with what you said, and so I'm going to try and get us a little focused here. Once again, 3 line items. I see 2 of them as already being spoken for. 500 is explicitly for Hamilton. The $1 million, in my mind, even though it's not listed there, but in my mind it was committed to the charter school. But we'll have to talk about that and make sure we all agree. I hope we do. The $2.5 million is for elementary schools. I think the conversation you just had is aimed at that. We have to decide on that $2.5 million. Are we going to say each of the 8 elementary schools gets $312,000 and they do whatever they want? Or are we instead going to say, no, we are going to get shade structures, we're going to get water filling stations, we're going to get security and do all that. But that's what it all falls into, is the $2.5 million. And then the rest of it, anything else, is falling into our trust and the competence of our folks who've done this thus far to get us across the finish line with what they're recommending. And based on what I've seen thus far, I have a high degree of confidence we can. So while there might be some overages, maybe on the fields, like they always are, there will be some ones where we come in under. I think it all balance out. Call me rose-colored glasses, whatever, but I do believe that we're this close, we can get there. Now, maybe there's going to be, in the end, there's going to be some ins and outs. We're going to have to do something. But I think what I want us to do from a move forward perspective is 1, confirm what we're going to do with that $1 million. And 2, decide what we're going to do with the 2.5 across the elementaries. Are we going to dictate it, or are we going to just give it to them and let them decide it, or a little of both?
Okay, so I got an idea on that, and we'll come back to that. Trustee Milrick, did you?
Yeah, I do. I think Diane's view of this, which is give me the list of all the projects that are pending, that we haven't committed significant engineering work to, it's a name on a list, is the list that we need to be thinking about. I think Greg's got it wrong. I think he's looking at a small little corner of the problem. I think we're being asked a much bigger question. I know for a fact, maybe water drinking fountains, maybe that's something we should have. It's sort of a new feature, but maybe that's more important than something that's on the list now. I think this is a chance for us to look over what choices we have now and then reset. And and maybe there'll be some of them I don't like and some of them I do like, but there's 7 of us, and I think that's as much flexibility as the staff can give us without wasting money. I think that's what we should be asking staff to deliver. I know in the projects, I'm assuming, you're coming forward with a track at Sinaloa and San Jose. I assume that's not the front field. I assume that's not the baseball diamond. I assume that's not Hamilton's field. So I can make a whole long list of things that I would love to get done that go, pretty fast, that can spend all the money you got and a whole lot more. But those are committed. You've paid for engineering dollars and we gave you direction. It's the ones where you haven't committed us that I'm interested in. And I think we owe it a fresh look while we can, right here. And Mike, with all credit to you, we're seeing some change in leadership in this program. I want to make that as smooth as possible and make sure the Greystone West gets as clear, and Todd gets as clear an understanding of how this board views the funds available so you can best serve the community that we represent. So I mean, it's an information exercise as much as it is anything else. So that's my 2 cents. So Greg, sorry to just sort of say no, but that's my view. So yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for staff. When you guys put this, these 3 pages of remaining bond projects in the order that they're in, is this an alpha order?
No order.
So this is what thank you. So what I'm sensing is we need a priority list. So if there's 20 things that need to be done, what do we make 17, 18, and 19, and 20 in case we run out of money and never get to? And so then what is the order that you have here?
There is no order. It was just, as I went through different lists to compile, we tried to put some thought at one time to organize it in a certain fashion, and that didn't come to fruition.
Is there would it be too much for you guys to put your heads together and come back and prioritize these things, or would?
Who got this microphone? So if I'm hearing the board correctly, I believe we can come back with a list. So our last slide was like what we're going to need from the board, but you've all talked about the summer 2023 list. We've already heavily involved. We're bringing schematic designs next week.
So they would be high on the priority list.
So they would be the first ones on the list. And then after that would be the remaining projects that we really haven't done anything with other than do a project estimate for. Can bring that, we can put it in a recommended priority order if that helps. I did want to mention one other thing. If you remember a little while ago, the board helped us establish school standards. And every school has to have a cafeteria and a kitchen. And so if you want us to maybe come forward with more recommended standards that include covered outdoor eating areas or standard water bottle fillers, not the 1970s version of the water fountain that's shut down for COVID. We can give you an expanded list of that for recommendations if that would help. So we can bring you more information in the order that you want it to give you an easier idea to how to prioritize or determine what you want to do or what you might not want to do and fund somewhere else.
So I think what we're asking for is we have a public comment, it looks like. So we're going to take that in a second, but we're from my perspective, I'm hearing you guys, we want a priority list so that we can sort of, whether we agree or not, we can say, these are the ones on the top of the list, we got to do them, and then we're going to get to projects that are hopeful, but maybe not. As far as adding new projects or taking projects off of this list and putting new ones on there, I think that would be difficult. And I think we could solve those problems down the stream, but I'm not saying that it isn't possible that something might change, and there are the dollar amounts that Trustee Mack referred to about we have elementary allocation, Hamilton allocation, and $1 million up for grabs. It's not literally what it says. Yeah. So that's what we have to, so I'm going to say we need a prioritization list that basically says, staff says, these are the things you got to do based on need, okay? And then we get to the things that are less needed, but we also need a process. So we need I would recommend that we ask staff to help us with a process. I think Mike came up with some ideas like, what do modern elementary schools have nowadays, water fountains, things along those lines. But we need a process to engage the sites, to hear from them, never relinquishing our oversight. And our concept of it isn't the total dollar amounts that your site is getting, it's based on what each site needs to have as a priority. So even the charter school, I wouldn't arbitrarily say there happens to be a line item of $1 million. I would say, let's put them through the same process that we put everyone else through. They're going to come back with a $10 million want list, but then we're going to take that $10 million want list and we're going to prioritize it and do as much as we can afford. So I guess, is it too much to ask staff to come up with a process for an analysis on the projects on here that are less specific in nature. So some ideas that help us develop a process, and then we'll decide how we want to go forward on that. So it's prioritize it, and then a process to prioritize the not allocated, but designated funds that we've designated elementary, a Hamilton site, possibly charter. We need a system for that as well. And then we also have talked a lot about the future, how we're going to continue to take care of the sites we've improved and the sites and the things that we never got to. And I just kind of want to remind everybody that even though we went out for $224 million in bonds this time, the list was over $400 million of need that really needs to be addressed, and that hasn't changed. We're doing a lot with deferred maintenance to keep it going, but we're never going to be able to do it all. But at the same time, I think we're kind of obligated to complete this bond process within the next 2 years, and that's what we're beginning that process of developing right now. So what did I miss?
Derek, I would just say that just what Mike was saying on school standards, I think that's a really important piece.
Yeah, that school standard idea was what I would say is bring us a process that we can discuss what we think is important, but not excluding the sites themselves. I think the board initially, unless we've changed our mind, the reason we set those aside with less specific designations for them is we really wanted them to tell us shade structures, water. I'm open to anything, T-ball field, but if they're not going to tell us what they think, I know we got principal lists recently, that helps, but I think that definitely has to be part of the process. Whether, so that's where I'm at. So is that, I guess that's the point. I mean, I'm asking you guys, did I articulate that well enough, or let's add some more? The superintendent's over here taking notes. So Trustee Miller.
I like the
Trustee Miller,
idea.
can I understand? I have a public comment. Can we just do that?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I will wait.
Let's hear the public comment, and then we'll pick it up on that. Okay, so Alan Harris, you want to address the board on the bond update?
Been a very educational experience to sit back and see all the information back and forth. Couple of things. Novato Charter School. Ross, fill me in if I'm wrong, but when the Hamilton-based property was transferred, I think it was transferred to the school district, and one of the parcels that we gave the use for to the charter school is the parcel they sit on now. I think the title probably is still in our name. I don't think we can transfer that under the arrangements between the Department of Defense.
Yeah, I think we're still bound by the rules of the Navy. Right. It's ours,
Yeah.
I think.
So
For maybe when that ends, it's changed, but right now I think.
for
it's ours.
history, the people who reside in Novato who voted for for the bond measures, facility bond measures, are taxpayers. I think they would expect that the charter school gets its fair share of the tax measures, unlike the parcel tax. I think the parcel tax is different because of the language that's specific in the authorization that was in each of the ballot proposals that went before the voters. That's point number one. It may help you clarify what you do, how you do it, and how much you put into the charter school before the measure's over. Second thing is, it's been my understanding since fiscal year 19-20 that, and so it would be for fiscal 21 and fiscal 22. Now we're in fiscal 23. But for those 3 years, the funds to replace the instructional equipment, the Chromebooks, have come out of either one-time or ongoing general funds in the district, that the facilities bond measure.
I don't think it changed until I came here,
It
which would have been
changed-
last
I know
year.
it changed when Yancey was the CFO. That was in the final report of.
Well, they'd have to speak to that, but I had thought the bond had paid for them.
Yes, but then they were charged to COVID monies, which resulted in the surplus for the close of the books for fiscal '20, the $5 million that suddenly appeared. Anyway, so the proposal made by the CFO tonight, I think we've already been doing that, and I would strongly encourage the board to continue it.
All right, so that's the other thing that we need to do tonight is page 52 is a recommendation that's been brought forward. We're not deciding tonight, but if anybody has any, like major objections or questions or wants in more detail on that, that would be something that would have to come back. So I'm not seeing any, so that's good news. All right, then Trustee Miller, you were going to make a comment if.
Yeah, so let me, two things. My first comment was, we want to make sure in this process, if it takes one more meeting or two more meetings or 10 more meetings, we don't slow down the projects that are operational. So we need advice from our CFO and bond program to make sure that we don't, in the process of considering this whole issue, we don't cost ourselves money. We've got stuff in flight and we need to continue the stuff that's in flight. Is my recommendation to us. The second point you just raised, Mr. President, is the items on page 52, and the CFOs continue to recommend we move the shift the one-to-world costs for Chromebooks out of bond and into general fund, and she's thought about it carefully, and I'm accepting her recommendation to us. For me, that's my view. The one I realize is, and oh, by the way, thank you, Wright Construction. Transferring of funds from IT classroom toolkit allocations. My dilemma with moving stuff out of that particular pile of money, bucket, whatever we want to, us accountants want to call it. I'm waiting for cameras to be installed. That comes out of that kit. I haven't seen the camera project started. I was asking for cameras to be scheduled and designed for elementary schools. I haven't seen that come forward. I know Tim was frustrated with furniture at some point. I assume that's been resolved. So I ask the IT department, not the bond department, but the functioning IT department and our CFO, have we met all of the objectives that we set for that technology program? And every time I ask about cameras, I'm told, well, we'll talk about them later. So I'm a little bit aggravated that you're asking to move money out of a program when every time I ask for it, I get put off instead of answers. So if you guys could answer the question, when are those programs actually going to be delivered on campus, instead, I would be a lot more amenable to the conversation, because I can't seem, multiple times have asked and not had answers. So obviously this is a public meeting and I'm sharing some frustration, so I'm sure you have answers.
I do. I appreciate the question. So some of that is some communication challenges we've had, the IT division of duties and who's covering what. No, I know. I'm not making an excuse either. I just, we are working with staff and we are going to bring you, we are waiting for the 50% design of the high school security camera project. It's being finalized right now. We'll be coming to you with a final project approval so we can award that contract to get that going. That will be up for installation. It doesn't have to wait till the summer, I don't think. As soon as we can get them out there, we're going to do that. I'm trying to remember. I think it's the security cameras for the high school are coming. It's November, December. I think it's the second board meeting in November. We'll be bringing that to you.
Right now, we're waiting for the 50% design drawing.
to go out to bid.
So Ross, I'm sorry I interjected on that. Part of the reason I caught that was a number that fluctuated between the pink sheets and the other sheet. So that seemed to be significant. So if we can get that dialed in, I think it will help too.
To Trustee Millick's question, we did beef up, and on page 50, we do have 3 line items for the security camera projects at the high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools, and that is already accounted for in the budget. It's
How do you know you got the cost covered if you don't even have 50% design documents? That's my frustration, is I keep hearing you've got it covered, and I keep hearing we're in the middle of design.
Trustee Miller.
So obviously I'm frustrated by this.
So what I want to do, I want to avoid getting down too deep into the particular project. I think the news is good for you because, as mentioned earlier, there's a holding, IT holding budget in here that's significant, that has not had allocation, and I think that basically that, I'm sure somebody has designs on it, but what I'm getting at is we have to follow the process. Things are happening the way they're happening, and let's just say everybody gets frustrated with what's going on, but that's our goal tonight, is to get back to the process of developing priorities, and then a process for figuring out how to allocate
So
the
my
specific
final comments
designations.
then on page 52 is I would not support item 3 until I get answers.
So
That's my answer.
So before you, okay, that's fine today because it's a staff report, Trustee Miller. But what I want you to, you are aware of the almost 4.4 million in IT program infrastructure holding budget. So that's a significant contingency to come forward.
So just to clarify that's where that 2 point that's on page 52 is coming from. So it basically cuts it in half.
So it's going to be reduced by 3.3.
No, to the third line down.
Oh, so the savings of the toolkit allocation, so that's going to come out of the holding budget?
There's time to answer these questions, so I'm looking for answers, not confrontation. I'm looking for answers.
No, I understand that. I get it. We're all on the.
Would
all
it
trying to
be
get there.
also helpful if we, especially since this camera project seems to be a sensitive one, if we brought forward a calendar as best we know it of what the timeline is going to be and why we have those dollars as budgeted for the projects, because it's not out of thin air. So, okay, we can do that also.
Yeah, I think that's part of the priority list that you're bringing back. Okay, and you'll get us a breakdown. I think that was mentioned earlier about it will be helpful to have this list broken down just a little bit more so we can see the dollar amounts associated with each thing and what's inside of it.
I looked at that and I didn't see that many that were doubled up, just to be clear. I saw the one that Maria talked about, but I didn't see too many others, if any. So we will look at it and try and split out anything that's doubled up in the projects.
And also, I noticed, going back to what was asked earlier, I know that like roof repairs and stuff are in the deferred maintenance, but maybe highlight those as what is in that deferred bucket versus the rest.
Yeah, we'd asked for that. I don't know I didn't know that we prioritized it, but it sounds like it's something that you guys would like to get sooner than later. So
The remaining items, just identify which ones are the deferred maintenance ones, which, like I said, it's kind of clear when it says roofing. I would just highlight, or where's another one? The sewer repair. Those are just within the deferred maintenance bucket, but they're on this full list. So I don't know if you want to just highlight, I don't know. I'm just saying that when you're doing the list, you can just mark that that's where those are, so that it's clear to say, okay, that's what that's coming from.
just have to have some agreement from you guys on whether that information is parsable.
We'll list them all as deferred maintenance, which are capital improvement, which are deferred maintenance. And then your prioritization largely on the deferred maintenance is where they fall on the replacement schedule. So, for example, San Marino HVAC has probably got another 5+ years left in its life, so I would move it probably to the end of the deferred maintenance list.
That's why you get the big bucks. Okay, so we've just got a few more minutes to stay on schedule. It's not to say that we can't go a little over. I see hands going up, but I'm going to ask you guys to think about, like, let's keep it on big picture for now, and the process to get to the things that really interest each of you individually, because it's killing me not to sit here and not to tell you what I want to do first, but I understand that we got a process going on here, and it's really got to be based on need and the information that they're going to give us, like life of an existing project, et cetera. And we're going to need some assurances that the security cameras aren't going to be a kerfuffle and we end up, not getting what we want and blah, blah, blah. So, all right. I'm going to go with the vice president. Had a question, Shannon?
Yeah, I agree with everything, the way you summed it up, President Nell, so I appreciate the direction that we're going, and what needs to come back. I just want to talk briefly about the charter school. I don't think you mentioned about having them part of the projects and having them maybe come up with some projects that they wanted done.
I asked staff to come up with a process for
process.
evaluating that, and I think it's engaging them, and I hypothetically said they'll come up with a list of 10 million, and then we're going to have to come, because I guess what I'm saying,
So let me
objectively
just-
on them, I don't want to limit it to a dollar amount.
Well, I do, because
Okay, all right.
our oversight is just a financial oversight. They have their own board, they maintain their own facilities. I want to say, here's the money, you do what you want, you go to your board and you decide what the projects need to be done. They're on their own entity, and I don't want them to be, I don't think they need to be a part of the process and where we go talk to them and go through all that. I'd rather give them a lump sum and say, here you go.
I don't know that we can just give them money to spend. I think it all has to be spent through us, so there will have to be some process with POs and approval and things.
Well, we could say, here's a dollar amount, but everything comes through us.
And,
Yes,
and everything
yes.
that you.
Well, that's,
Yes.
yeah.
So
That's not changing
so-
what I'm recommending.
Okay, so right, you want to make sure we have the oversight, that everything is done.
But I don't want to tell them, you can't do this, or you can't do that. I don't know.
All right,
They
so
have
that-
their own.
Just as a reminder that any projects that they choose to do have to fall within the ballot language of Measure G.
Yeah,
They can't
yeah.
just,
No, I don't want us to be deciding you can't, well, we would, because it has to fall within the ballot language. I don't want to put I don't know how to say it, but I'd rather give them, I don't want to give them instructions on everything that they can do. But within our means of what we need to do, I'd rather just give them a dollar amount. Okay.
Okay, so we're not deciding that anything along those lines tonight, but so what we're saying is that whatever they do, whatever amount, it's going to be by the book.
Yeah.
And we're still going to maintain oversight. I'm going to just, as a trustee, say, let's be open-minded and try not, because, what if it comes back and you set a dollar amount and they need 9% more than that? You're a hard lady. All right. So we'll put that to a democratic process during the decision-making time. That's all I can say to that, because we're not deciding that, but I think that we should be more objective. That's just my take on it. Okay. Just Trustee Jacobson.
I wondered about the line items that are HVAC replacement, if those are total replacements or fixing what's needed, and maybe this is for the list we're getting later, but I wanted to throw it out.
They're totally deferred maintenance projects. No, not ductwork, not just the condensers, the rooftop units.
But in every classroom?
Well,
Like at San Marin, in every classroom?
they don't have in classrooms or rooftop units, so it's more of a central system. Yes. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Did that help? Trustee Gasson, did you have another question or comment, or? Okay. So, what are we leaving out? Or because my next step is the superintendent to say, do you think you got a handle on what's been said and what you think we want, and being the expert that she is?
Lois, and make sure my notes are the same, and something outside of this, but what I have down is the projects in process, the list of items that have not yet begun, the school standards that Mike suggested, which I like, and the priority based on need. And so, and then the cameras were sort of out of it, and then we'll talk about page 52 as well. Are we close? Yeah.
Okay, think about that. We got a couple more minutes before I gavel. Any more questions or comments? Trustee Aguila?
I just have a question about transparency and the process. So obviously tonight wasn't televised, correct? It was televised. Okay, great. And just wanted to make sure that the community is updated on what's been going on somehow through websites or whatever we need to do, just to keep them, just so they're able to see where we are and what the process is, and of course that it would be in Spanish also if possible, and that's it, just transparency.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll get the board, these board reports are out, and the information that's gonna be coming forward that we see will be published as well. I'm not sure, if what else we could do, but if you can think of it, we can think of it, we will, and we're certainly gonna do as much bilingual communication as we can.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's opposed to that. All right,
Thank you.
so, time to go home and have dinner for those of us who haven't done that yet. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for being here and paying attention, and we've got some work to do yet, and just want to show appreciation for our community on the facilities we've been able to build out. We are adjourned.